My name is Daniel Mercer. I'm 43 years old. I'm a single father to a little girl who's everything to me. Emily, my light, my softness in a world that's been anything but kind. I've worked in cybersecurity for most of my life, built a quiet career that paid the bills, kept us safe, and gave us peace. I don't have a loud family, but I have a long memory, and when it comes to my daughter, I never forget. Ever. Emily turned 8 last March. She'd been counting down the days with the sort of excitement only kids can manage, leaping out of bed every morning with wild guesses about her cake, the colors of her balloons, and the presents she might receive. I didn't have much family to rely on, but my parents, who had been mostly distant, sent her a gift by courier, a box with silver wrapping and a card that simply said, "Happy birthday from Grandma and Grandpa." I wanted to believe it was a sweet gesture. So did Emily. She tore it open with both hands and gasped when she saw the soft pink dress folded inside. But then something in her changed. She held it up with both hands, smiling, until she noticed the seam near the collar. Her smile dimmed. Her fingers brushed over it. "What is this, Daddy?" she asked, her eyes narrowing in confusion. At first, I didn't see it until I stepped closer and looked at the inner label. My stomach tightened. My breath caught in my throat. I knew that logo. I knew it too well. My hands started shaking, but I didn't cry, not in front of her. I just said, "It's nothing, baby. Let's put it away for now." She nodded and didn't ask again, but I didn't forget. That label, stitched in black and gold, came from a private designer my sister used years ago for a line of dresses that were made specifically for her late daughter, my niece, the one who passed when she was only 6. No one was supposed to have those pieces. They were meant to be buried, and yet here it was, in my daughter's hands, wrapped like a gift from my own parents. My blood turned cold. Not because of the dress itself, but because of what it meant, what it revealed, and the terrible thing it confirmed. I didn't pick up their calls that night. They rang my phone over and over, their names lighting up my screen like alarms. But I wasn't ready to talk. Not yet. I needed silence, I needed time, and I needed to think clearly, without emotion clouding the facts. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to accuse. That's not who I am. But I was going to find out why they still had that dress, why it ended up with my daughter, and what else they might be hiding. The next morning, I sent Emily to school and sat in the kitchen with that pink dress in front of me. I turned it over, inspecting every inch. The stitching was identical. The tag had the old date, 2015. The exact year my niece died. I remembered being at the funeral. I remembered my sister sobbing as she told us she buried her baby in her favorite dress. This dress. So, how did it end up in a box in my house, on my daughter's birthday? My hands weren't shaking anymore. They were still cold, ready. I didn't go to work that day. I didn't eat. I didn't speak. I just sat there in that chair, listening to the quiet tick of the clock on the wall and the occasional sound of a car passing outside. My parents had always been difficult, critical, distant, more interested in appearances than in truth. But I never thought they'd cross a line this sacred. Giving Emily a dress from a dead child, a buried child, my niece. It wasn't just strange, it was calculated. And suddenly I started remembering things I had long buried myself. My sister Claire had been the softest of us all, the kind you'd never expect to break. But when her daughter passed, she shattered. I tried to be there, but my parents, they turned cold, told her to stop crying in public, told her she was embarrassing the family with her grief. I remembered the day she said she couldn't take it anymore, that she was leaving the state for good. She left behind everything, her house, her furniture, even her phone. but not her daughter's things. She had told me herself. She was burying the little girl in her favorite clothes. She even described the pink dress in detail, tears falling from her chin onto the kitchen table as she spoke. I remember holding her hand, promising I'd never forget. But someone did forget, or someone lied, and now, years later, that promise came rushing back like a ghost. I searched every file I had from that time, photos, messages, anything Claire had sent me, and I found it, a picture she'd texted me the night before the funeral, her daughter in the pink dress, asleep in her lap, same embroidery, same collar, same lace trim. And now, somehow that same dress had been boxed up and mailed from my parents' home, across the country, and into the arms of my own daughter. Why? I began making quiet calls, nothing emotional, just direct. I contacted the funeral home first, asked about burial records. They were vague, but cooperative. They told me that yes, the body had been dressed at the family's request, but they hadn't kept records of the clothing, only the casket style and arrangement. That didn't help. So I called a woman I hadn't spoken to in years, my sister's old best friend, Marla. I asked if she had photos from the funeral. She hesitated, clearly startled by my voice after all this time, but eventually she sent over a few. One photo changed everything. It was a shot of the open casket. My niece was dressed in white, not pink, not even close. I stared at that photo for hours, comparing it to the one from Claire, the one she sent before the funeral. Two different dresses, two different stories, which meant one thing: someone had switched the outfit, and Claire had no idea. But someone else did. Someone with access, someone with influence, my parents. That night I answered their call for the first time. My mother's voice came through, high and nervous. "Daniel, did Emily like the gift?" I didn't respond at first. I just let the silence press down. Then I asked, "Where did you get the dress?" The line went quiet. No stuttering, no confusion. Just silence. That's when I knew. They hadn't just made a mistake. They had made a decision. A cold, manipulative decision that I was now going to expose, quietly, methodically, and without warning. I didn't tell them what I knew. Not yet. Silence has a way of disarming the arrogant. People who think they're always in control get nervous when they don't hear panic. So I kept my tone calm, thanked them for the call, and hung up without another word. The truth was, I wasn't just disturbed by the dress. I was beginning to suspect that what my parents had done went far deeper than poor judgment. It wasn't just about a garment, it was about power, and it had always been about control. Growing up, I was the second son, the quiet one, the compliant one. Claire was the bright light, and they resented that about her. My parents demanded obedience, image, and silence. And Claire, she loved loudly, cried honestly, and questioned everything. After her daughter passed, she fell into a grief so raw it scared them. Instead of holding her, they cut her loose, claimed she was unstable, claimed she was tarnishing the family name. They said things I can never forget, and when she left town, I thought they had let her go, but now I was seeing it, clear as day. They had rewritten the ending of her story for themselves, and the dress was the first crack in that illusion. I went into research mode. At work, I had access to more than most. I wasn't reckless. I was surgical, quiet searches, no alerts. I dug into logistic records. I wanted to know if that designer ever made duplicates of the dress. According to old archived records from the designer's site, no, every dress was custom-made, numbered, and registered. Only 5 were made in that style, and only 1 in that exact color and size. That meant the one Claire gave her daughter to wear in the casket should have been the only one, but it wasn't. That one was here now, in my home. Then I remembered something even more disturbing. Claire's sudden breakdown just before she left. She had called me sobbing, saying she felt like her daughter was being erased, that something didn't feel right after the funeral. I'd written it off as grief. I'd told her she needed rest, but maybe she had sensed the truth. Maybe she knew, deep down, that something sacred had been violated. I had failed to listen then. I wasn't going to fail again. I found an old storage unit under my parents' name, one I had helped them rent years ago when they claimed they were downsizing. I still had the digital key. I made the drive early the next Saturday morning, alone, before the sun came up, and what I found inside nearly dropped me to my knees. Boxes, labeled and sorted by name. My niece's name. Inside were toys, drawings, and worst of all, clothes. Several of them. Claire's daughter's belongings. Not given to Claire, not buried with her, but hoarded, hidden, like trophies. I took pictures of everything. Every label, every timestamp, every box. Then I closed the unit and walked away, heart pounding but face calm. I wasn't going to confront my parents. I wasn't going to scream or ask why. I was going to make it all come crashing down without raising my voice once. They had built a lie, and I was going to let the truth quietly unbuild it. The weight of it all sat with me like a stone, but I moved with discipline. No rash actions, no emotional calls. I took everything I had, photos, voice recordings, storage records, and started assembling a quiet file. I wasn't interested in revenge in the traditional sense. I wasn't trying to humiliate them. I was trying to expose them, to unravel the twisted narrative they had created while wearing the mask of mourning grandparents. And I was going to do it in the same way they had operated all their lives, through image, reputation, and silence. First, I reached out to Claire. We hadn't spoken in nearly 7 years. I found her in Vermont, teaching art to kids in a small private program. Her voice cracked when she heard mine. I could feel the hesitation in her silence. I told her I had something important to show her, something about her daughter. I didn't want to do it over the phone, so I drove up, bringing only one thing with me, the pink dress. When I handed it to her, she didn't say anything for a long time. She just held it, then crumpled onto the floor, hugging it to her chest. Her sobs were quiet, but the kind that shake the room. And when she finally spoke, she didn't ask how I got it. She just whispered, "I knew it." She told me the story again, how the funeral home asked for the burial outfit, and she had handed it over personally, folded and sealed in a protective bag. But after the funeral, something haunted her. She thought the dress looked different. Not quite the same, but when she brought it up, our parents brushed it off, told her it was grief, made her feel unstable, gaslit her, the way they always did. And so she doubted herself, until now, until this, until the proof landed in her arms again, stained not by time, but by betrayal. We went through the pictures together, the photos from the storage unit, the designer records, the casket photo from Marla. I didn't need to convince her. She already knew. The question now was what to do with it. Claire wasn't vengeful, but she had been broken, and now, for the first time in years, she had the truth in her hands. I told her I could handle the rest. She nodded. She trusted me. This time, I wasn't going to fail her. I went back home and made one final quiet move. My parents sat on the board of a prominent charity, an organization for grieving families, of all things. Their public image was built on empathy, on community, on healing, and so I sent the file, everything, to the board's chairperson, not with malice, not with a dramatic message. Just a single sentence in the email, "This is what they've done." And then I waited. It didn't take long. Within a week they were removed from the board. An anonymous press leak followed. The media didn't name me, but the facts were damning. A private investigation was launched. People whispered, neighbors talked. My parents went silent, their perfect image cracked, not with a bang, but a slow, public unthreading, and I hadn't said a word. I didn't need to. The fallout was silent, but deep. My parents didn't reach out again, not after the board terminated their involvement, not after the community's polite distance turned into cold avoidance. They retreated, not with apologies or explanations, but with the same coldness they used to exile my sister all those years ago. I knew they were watching, though, reading, waiting, hoping, perhaps, that I'd publicly denounce the claims so they could slip back into their illusion. But I never made a sound. I didn't give them the dignity of confrontation. I kept living my life. I made breakfast for Emily, walked her to school, answered her innocent questions with a calm that came from deep, earned wisdom. She never knew the full story. She didn't need to. She only knew the dress was gone, and that her father had taken care of it. That was enough. I had protected her from a legacy of manipulation. The same quiet poison that had seeped through our bloodline for decades. And I had done it without raising my voice, without burning down the house. Just like they never saw it coming, they would never get the satisfaction of a reaction. Claire, meanwhile, began to heal. I visited her often. We framed one of her daughter's old drawings together and hung it in her art room. She'd smile at it now, not with sorrow, but with something quieter, peace, maybe. Her trust in me was unspoken, but constant. Sometimes she'd just sit across the room while I read or worked and whisper, "Thank you, Daniel," like the words had to be released in pieces. I'd nod. There was no need to say more. Our bond had survived the worst. And that survival was its own kind of justice. The charity went on, restructured and rebuilt. I kept my name out of everything. I didn't want the credit. I didn't want headlines. I only wanted the truth to be free, not buried. I watched from afar as their reputation slowly dissolved. Not with lawsuits or police reports, but with silence. No one trusted them anymore. Invitations stopped coming. Their proud family name, once their prized possession, now carried the weight of doubt and whispered shame. It was the kind of punishment you can't buy your way out of, the kind they would feel every time they walked into a room and felt the temperature shift. There was one moment, though, that nearly broke my resolve. A letter arrived one morning. No return address, no handwriting, just a typed envelope. I opened it, expecting venom, but inside was a picture of me and Claire as children, with a single line written beneath it. We were only trying to keep her memory alive. I stared at it for a long time, not in confusion but in disgust. They still didn't get it. Love is not possession. Grief is not control. And memory, true memory, can only be kept clean through truth, not secrecy. That picture went in the fire. The last move I made wasn't for them. It was for me. I closed the storage unit and had everything Claire didn't want returned to her personally. Then I deleted every file, every trace of the investigation. I wasn't interested in trophies. I was interested in restoration. What they did may follow them forever, but I wasn't going to let it follow me. I've come to learn that the most powerful justice is the one that doesn't need applause. It's the one that happens when you're no longer consumed by the need to be heard, because the silence itself speaks louder than anything you could say. That's where I found myself, quietly free, and there was no longer any weight to carry. Not theirs, not the history they tried to rewrite, not the guilt for all the years I didn't listen to Claire more closely. That was gone now, burned in the same flame that consumed their legacy. I didn't respond to their letter. I didn't send one back. I didn't even speak about it to Claire. Some words are written to manipulate, not to apologize. And some people believe that sentiment, when delivered in just the right font, can replace truth, but I had no room for their version of remembrance. I had seen their version up close. It was control. It was image. It was rewriting history to suit their comfort. They didn't preserve my niece's memory. They preserved their status. And now they were left with the ashes. A few weeks later, I sat alone in the park, watching Emily play with her new sketchpad. She'd taken up drawing lately. Claire had given her the same brand of colored pencils she used as a child, and Emily carried them like treasure. I watched her draw a field of pink tulips, carefully shaded and labeled. I smiled, not because of the drawing, but because she didn't know what pink used to mean to our family. She had reclaimed it. In her world, it was just a flower, not a dress stitched with secrets. Sometimes I wondered what my parents told people. Maybe they claimed the whole thing was fabricated. Maybe they blamed Claire or me. It didn't matter. Their words had lost weight. The quiet dignity of truth had already passed judgment, and every relationship they tried to salvage now came with a shadow, an invisible question mark that couldn't be erased. That was the kind of justice I had hoped for. Not to see them destroyed, but to see them forced to live with something they could no longer control: reality. Emily never asked about the dress again. Children have a way of knowing when something doesn't need to be spoken. But one day, she did say something that stopped me in my tracks. She was painting a picture of our family, just her and me, and she looked up and said, "Daddy, you always make things better when they feel wrong." I didn't respond. I couldn't. My throat was tight and my heart full. I didn't need to be the loudest parent. I didn't need to explain the war I had fought behind the scenes. She felt safe. That was enough. And Claire? She started painting again. Big, bright pieces that filled the walls of her new studio. She invited local kids, held workshops, and began speaking publicly about grief, truth, and healing. Not once did she name names. Not once did she point fingers. She didn't need to. Her voice, once silenced by guilt and manipulation, now echoed in every stroke of her brush. And I was there for all of it, quietly, proudly. Some days, I still think about the version of our family that existed in public, the polished dinners, the holiday photos, the empty rituals. How many people admired them from afar, never knowing what simmered underneath. I think that's what made their downfall so potent. Not just what they did, but the illusion they hid behind. That's why I never needed to raise my voice. Truth has its own gravity, and when you release it with precision, it pulls every lie down with it, no matter how well it's dressed. Claire and I eventually made a quiet visit to the cemetery. It was her idea, not mine. She brought a small bundle of letters she had written to her daughter over the years, sealed in envelopes, yellowed at the edges. We didn't say much as we stood there. She placed the letters by the grave and whispered a few things only a mother would know how to say. Then she turned to me and said, "I'm not afraid to remember anymore." That sentence meant more to me than any court victory ever could. In the weeks that followed, I got used to life without the background noise of my parents' approval. There was a strange peace in knowing that I no longer needed anything from them. Not their attention, not their explanations. They couldn't rewrite what had been revealed, and they wouldn't get a second chance to do so. I was no longer the son who needed their validation. I was the man who had chosen truth, even when it meant walking away from blood. At work, things remained the same on the surface, but I changed. My posture, my tone, even the way I moved through meetings. People noticed. One colleague pulled me aside and said, "You've been real quiet lately, like you know something the rest of us don't." I smiled and replied, "Maybe I do, because the truth is, once you go through something like that, once you protect someone you love from a quiet form of evil, You no longer see the world the same way, and you certainly don't fear it. I used to think justice had to be loud, that it had to be seen to be felt, but now I know better. The most profound justice is lived. It's the peace that comes when you no longer owe anyone your silence. It's the clarity in your daughter's eyes when she laughs without fear. It's the stillness of a repaired bond between siblings. That's justice. It doesn't need a stage. It needs only truth and time. And truth always arrives. Whether in a box on a birthday or in the hands of someone willing to see it through. It wasn't long before whispers started making their way back to me. Mutual acquaintances, extended relatives, people I hadn't spoken to in years, began calling, texting, just checking in. But I wasn't fooled. I knew they had heard fragments of the story. Not the whole thing, of course, just enough to start questioning the family narrative they had been fed for so long. Some were skeptical, some wanted the gossip. But the few just wanted to say they were sorry for not seeing it sooner. I accepted their words politely, but didn't linger. I had no desire to relive the details for them. The truth had already done its work. I didn't need to go around proving anything. And besides, I wasn't trying to ruin my parents. I was trying to reclaim something sacred. My daughter's safety, my sister's dignity, my own peace. And those things don't come from proving you were right. They come from choosing not to carry what isn't yours anymore. I had let go of the need to be understood by everyone. That was freedom I never knew I needed until I tasted it. Claire and I started seeing each other more. Dinners were simple, just roasted vegetables, old family recipes she finally felt comfortable making again. Sometimes Emily would come along and they'd paint side by side in the sunroom while I read on the porch. It was the kind of quiet life our parents used to call boring. But to me it was sacred because nothing was hidden anymore. No secrets hanging in the air, no performance, just presence. Every so often, I'd think about that storage unit, about all the things they hoarded, pretending they were honoring a memory while erasing the woman who loved that child most. And I wondered, was it ever about love for them, or was it always about control? That question used to keep me up at night, but now I let it pass. Some people will never understand the difference between holding on and letting go. My parents were the type to cling to what made them feel powerful, even at the cost of others' healing. But I wasn't. The greatest revenge, I've come to learn, is peace. Not silence born of fear, but peace born of clarity. And now, even when I think of them, I don't feel hate. I feel distance. Like a storm that has passed. You remember the lightning, you remember the thunder, but you no longer flinch when the rain falls. I've built a new kind of legacy, one where the truth is never a threat and love is never conditional. Emily is growing up in a house where secrets don't fester, where pain isn't denied and silence isn't demanded. And Claire, she's rebuilding from ashes that should never have existed. Together, we chose the hard path. But it was the only one that ever led home. A few months later, I got a letter, not typed this time, handwritten, in my father's familiar slanted cursive. It arrived without warning, tucked neatly into a plain envelope with no return address. I opened it slowly, unsure if I was prepared to read whatever version of reality he was about to present. The tone was what I expected, controlled, careful, calculated. He didn't apologize. He didn't ask for forgiveness. He simply wrote, "You've made your point, but you've destroyed your family in the process." I folded the letter once and slid it back into the envelope. It didn't make me angry. It made me sad for him. For the life he could have had, if only he knew how to love without ownership. It was clear he still believed this was about winning and losing. He still didn't see that I didn't destroy the family. I revealed it. The destruction was already there, buried under years of image polishing and emotional suppression. All I did was peel back the wallpaper. He just didn't like what was underneath. The greatest grief I carry isn't what they did. It's that they'll never understand why it was wrong. They were given every chance to choose truth over comfort, to honor memory over manipulation, and they chose silence, repeatedly, habitually, until it became the very language of our family. But I refused to speak it anymore. That refusal cost me my relationship with them, but gave me something they never had: integrity. I traded their approval for clarity. And I'd make that trade again, every single time. Claire read the letter too. She didn't cry. She simply said, "He's still talking like it's a game." I nodded. She was right. For them, this had always been about control. But for us, it had become something deeper, a return to something real, something unshakable. She didn't need his remorse. Neither did I. We weren't healing to receive anything from them. We were healing to return something to ourselves, our own voices. Emily began asking more questions as she got older. Nothing too pointed, just curious things, like why we don't visit Grandma and Grandpa, or why certain people never came to her birthday parties. I never lied. I just told her, sometimes people hurt others and never say sorry, and sometimes we protect the people we love by giving them space to grow somewhere else. She always seemed to understand. Children don't need the details, they just need the truth in a language they can hold. And when she asked about the dress, months later during a quiet car ride, I told her, "It wasn't meant for you, but someone gave it to you anyway. And I made sure it never hurt you." She nodded once, and that was enough. No tears, no confusion, just trust. And that trust, built moment by moment, is the foundation I now live on. There's a strange kind of power in watching something fall apart from a distance, not with pleasure, but with clarity. I heard through a quiet source that my parents had withdrawn almost entirely from their social circles. The charity world didn't want them back. Their neighbors stopped inviting them to events. Even their church, a place they once used to maintain their image, had begun to cool its welcome. They weren't exiled publicly, just forgotten. The same way they tried to forget Claire, forgotten by the very systems they once manipulated. But unlike them, I didn't need to parade my victories. Justice doesn't live in headlines. It lives in the calm of your own home. It lives in the way your child sleeps at night, without fear, in the way your sister laughs again without flinching at memories. That's where I find my peace now, in the quiet spaces they can't reach, in the life they never understood how to build, because they were too busy trying to control the narrative. I started journaling again, something I hadn't done since college. Not for publication, not for proof, but to track my own return to self. I wrote about trust, about silence, about the things people inherit when no one teaches them how to grieve properly. I wrote about Claire's resilience, about Emily's innocence, about how the past doesn't lose its power until you speak it out loud and then choose to walk forward without carrying its weight. My words became a mirror, reflecting the man I'd become, and I liked who I saw now. Claire sent me one of her paintings not long after. It was abstract, soft pinks and golds, streaked across a pale canvas. In the corner, barely visible, were the outlines of two small figures, a child and a parent holding hands. She called it Return. I hung it in my hallway, just above the shoes Emily always leaves scattered near the door. Every time I pass it, I feel two things: sorrow for what we lost, and gratitude for what we protected. One morning, I received a message from the funeral home director, the same one who had vaguely helped me months ago. He thanked me, said he had quietly changed a few internal policies because of our conversation. Stricter item tracking, verified documentation for burial clothing. He didn't mention the investigation, but I knew what he meant. It wasn't loud reform, but it was real. And it meant no one else's goodbye would be quietly rewritten again. That was more than I had hoped for. And then, one quiet evening, as the sun began to dip, Emily crawled into my lap with her sketch pad. She had drawn another dress, pink, with lace trim, but this time she had drawn wings behind it. "It's a goodbye dress," she said softly. "But the wings mean she flew away happy." I didn't ask who she was. I didn't need to. I just held her close and whispered, "That's beautiful," because it was. In her own way, she was painting peace onto something she didn't even fully understand, but I understood. And for the first time in years, I felt truly free. Years have passed now. Emily's older, taller, sharper with her words and questions. Claire's gallery is thriving, full of children's voices, paint on the walls and a quiet joy that seems to follow her everywhere. As for me, I've never returned to the town I grew up in. The house I was raised in is just a memory now, and not one I feel the need to revisit. Sometimes people ask if I've made peace with my parents, and I tell them this: I've made peace with the truth. That's enough. Forgiveness is often romanticized as something we owe others, but I've learned it's something we owe ourselves first. Not to absolve those who harmed us, but to stop giving them space in our spirit. I forgave them in silence, not to reopen a door, but to close one without bitterness. That forgiveness was for me. It was the final act of reclaiming everything they tried to rewrite. I no longer wait for apologies that will never come. I no longer search for meaning in their silence. One autumn evening, Emily and I visited Claire's studio for her birthday. She wore a soft blue dress this time, by choice. Claire surprised her with a custom painting, Emily's tulip field from years ago, reimagined with light pouring through the petals. "For the girl who changed the story," Claire said. Emily beamed, and I watched, knowing that whatever pain had traveled through our bloodline had stopped with us. That legacy of silence had ended. Not with anger, not with revenge, but with love that stood its ground. I still have the picture my father sent, the one of Claire and me as children. It's in a drawer, not displayed. I don't look at it often, but I keep it, not as a keepsake of pain, but as a reminder that there was once something real before the distortions began, and that even in the presence of betrayal, there was once love. Even if it got buried under years of control and denial, I keep it, because memory matters. But now I choose which memories to water and which to let dry out and blow away. This story, my story, isn't about vengeance. It's about the quiet strength it takes to protect what matters most, without becoming what broke you. It's about standing still while the storm circles and never letting it carry away your voice. It's about the strength to build a new future without needing to destroy the past. Because sometimes just walking away is enough. Sometimes silence is the loudest sentence you'll ever speak. So, if you've come this far with me, I'll say this: hold your truth gently but firmly. You don't need to shout. You don't need to beg. Just stand. Protect what's sacred. Guard the innocent. And when the time comes to act, do it with quiet precision and walk away in peace. Because the loudest justice is the one that leaves no scars on your soul. Only wisdom, and the kind of silence that sets you free.